Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm talking about makeup I'm glad that I didn't buy, and I'm excited to film this video because I filmed a video like this at the end of 2019. I think I talked about palettes I'm glad I didn't buy, and it was so much fun to film and so much fun to read your comments on that video. So I thought maybe in 2020 I could film these videos a little bit more regularly. I do film purchase or past videos where I talk about makeup I'm considering, and sometimes when it comes down to it, I'm glad I skipped over the products because they either got terrible reviews or I don't think they would end up working for me for some reason, or I found something in my collection that kind of replaced them. So I have a couple of products to talk about in today's video. I was thinking about buying the Melt Cosmetics Millennial Pink Eyeshadow Palette. I was debating between this one and the Natasha De Nonna Love Palette, and ultimately I decided to go with the Natasha De Nonna Love Palette for my February palette, and I told myself if I still wanted the Melt Cosmetics palette in March, I could buy it then. I'm glad that I waited because this palette has been getting a lot of poor reviews. It's gotten some good reviews, but I feel like in general when I watch a YouTube video or I read a blog post or see it on Instagram, a lot of people are saying that the matte shadows are a little bit more difficult to blend. Some of the metallics in here are just underwhelming. Because this palette only has 10 shades, if even just a few of them aren't really great, then I feel like that makes a big difference in deciding whether or not the $58 price tag is worth it. So I'm glad that I skipped it because I just don't want an inconsistent palette for that price point. The other reason that I'm glad I didn't go with this one is because even though I love pink eyeshadow, I feel like the majority of the looks that I've seen using this palette in particular and like using the pink shades, the looks are very, very similar. It just doesn't seem like there's as much variety as I had originally thought there was within this palette. And because some of the shades don't perform well, some of the deeper shades look a little bit patchy, I don't know how often I would use them. So I did purchase the Natasha De Nonna Love palette. I've only used it a few times, but so far I'm glad I went with that one. I'll do a full review on it very soon, but in the end, I'm glad that I went with the Love palette over the Melt Cosmetics palette. So speaking of Natasha De Nonna, I thought about buying her Love Glow Cheek palette, which was released at the same time as her eyeshadow palette. This retails for $55. I think I actually said I was going to buy it as soon as like a Sephora VIB sale rolled around. But honestly, I'm glad that I waited because I feel like the excitement for this palette kind of wore off for me. The excitement over her eyeshadow palette never wore off, so I did end up picking that one up and I'm glad that I did. But that's one of the main reasons I try not to impulse buy, because sometimes I'm so excited about a new product and then if I just wait a few weeks, the excitement dies down. And if it doesn't, then I think it's okay to purchase the product as long as I'm not, making a bad purchasing decision. But sometimes it does, and I can find other products in my collection that are similar or things that I would just use instead. So for me, this palette's really gorgeous. I do think I would get use out of it, but I've been struggling with texture on my cheeks. I've mentioned this in a few videos. I've been testing out some new skincare, some new makeup. I feel like my skin is just not its best. So because of that, I've been skipping a lot of products that really enhance texture. And I just noticed that a lot of her glowy blushes or highlighters really bring a lot of attention to the texture on my skin. I'm just not reaching for formulas like that very often. And that's not to say I wouldn't use this cheek palette, but I just feel like my preferences, they change so much, which is why I think it is important to kind of hold off and maybe not buy backups or impulse buy, because you never know how you're going to be feeling in like a week or two. So in the meantime, I've just been like skipping a lot of super glowy blushes, a lot of really heavy, intense highlighters, and I just think it's for the best. I didn't buy this one. I saved myself some money, and if I really want like a glowy cheek product, I have her Bloom Blush and Glow palette from last year that I would be able to use instead of this one. So I'm okay with skipping this one for now. It's beautiful, but in the end, I just don't think I would use it as much as I originally thought I would. I have to say, I am glad that I skipped over the Anastasia Beverly Hills Amuse palette, even though I kind of went back and forth in my mind for a little while. I told myself I didn't need this one, but even after I said that, I was tempted to buy it, to be honest with you guys, because I do love my Anastasia palettes. There's something about them that just pulls me in. Like Anastasia palettes and ColourPop palettes, every time they release a new one, I'm drawn to it. Anyways, I decided to pull out some of my palettes that had similar shades because a lot of my Anastasia palettes have very similar shades to this one. So that really helped me because not only was I using similar shades and creating similar looks, I was using like the exact same formula. So I really felt like after doing that, it solidified my original decision to skip over the palette. It might be really easy for you to say no to eyeshadow palettes and skip over them, but I feel like there's always like one category for a lot of us that just really appeals to us and we want to try more products from that collection. And even when you're trying to make mindful decisions, sometimes it's hard. Like sometimes you just want to buy products even though you know in the back of your mind you don't need them. So I do feel like that's a really good practice. If you see something that you're interested in buying, it's really nice to be able to go into your collection, see what you have, see if you can recreate it with a few other products, or just find something very similar. And that really helps to get the feeling that I want to buy the product out of my system. So this was actually a holiday release, but I did consider buying the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Edit Unlocked palette when they re-released it this holiday season. I think they initially came out with it in 2018, and then they brought it back for 2019 because it was so popular. And I do like Hourglass powders. In fact, I think their powders are some of my favorites. I love their blushes. So anyways, I never actually saw this palette in person, which I think is why I didn't buy it. $80 is a lot to spend on something that you're not sure will work for you completely. And there were shades that I thought would work, but I didn't feel like I needed it. I think the reason why I was so tempted to buy it is because I felt, I guess, like FOMO, because in 2018 it was so big and so popular that I just kind of wanted it when they re-released it. But I decided to skip over it, and I'm glad that I did because I've been making really good progress. My Project Pan products sit right over there on top of like where I do my makeup, and I've been making such good progress on them. I am so proud of myself, including a few powders. So I think if I had purchased this palette with like 6 different powders, I wouldn't have used the ones that I have in my collection as much, and I don't know that I would have fallen in love with all 6 of these shades in particular. So I feel glad that I skipped over this one. $80 is a lot, and honestly, I don't know that I really need an $80 face palette again. There are 2 Fenty releases that I was thinking about buying that I'm glad that I didn't buy. The first one would have to be the Fenty Beauty Snap Shadows. When they first released these, I wasn't really interested in them. There wasn't anything about them that really caught my eye, and I felt like Fenty's previous eyeshadow formulas got very mediocre reviews. So the only really interesting thing about these palettes, in my opinion, is the fact that they snap together, and I think they obviously did a good job with the marketing campaign because that little fact did set them apart, and I feel like that kind of created a lot of hype around them. But the more that I thought about it, the more that I realized if I had purchased these, it totally would have been because there was hype surrounding them. I really wasn't even excited about them. I wasn't interested in them. I was like, maybe I'll just buy them, review them on my channel. But when it came down to it, I didn't even want them. So I'm glad that I waited. Again, another reason I'm glad that I don't impulse buy, especially because I feel like once people got past the packaging, a lot of people said the actual formula was just mediocre. So there wasn't really anything super special about them. People weren't raving about the actual quality. So I'm glad that I waited and skipped over them because instead of buying those, I bought the e.l.f. palettes that were like $3, and those were amazing. I actually also almost bought the Fenty Stunna New Year highlighter and lip set, which retails for $50. I'm glad that I skipped this one for a couple of reasons. First of all, the highlighter looks nice, and I'm still curious to try another one of the Fenty highlighters, but if I had my choice, I'd probably go for a different duo. This one comes with Hustle Baby, which I did own. I had a mini version, and I loved it, but I broke it. So I've been wanting that back in my collection, but the other side is Mean Money, and I don't love the shade Mean Money. It kind of looks like a dry matte highlighter, and I just don't know how much I would use it. So I feel like I would be settling. If I really want Hustle Baby, I'd almost rather just purchase the little set that comes with like the mini Hustler Baby and the mini Gloss Bomb because I know I would use both of those products. I am curious to try the Fenty lip paints because this does come with a Fenty lip paint in like a red shade, but when they released this, we were coming off of the holiday season and I was super into red liquid lipstick and I told myself I was going to keep wearing them into January. I was like, it's not a phase. I love red lips. Guess how many times I've worn red liquid lipstick since then? I don't think I've worn it once. So how many red liquid lipsticks do I honestly need? I don't need to keep buying them. I don't need to keep trying new formulas because as much as I do love red liquid lipstick, it's not something I wear every single day. So I don't think I would have reached for either one of these products very often. Like I said, another brand that's hard for me to skip over is ColourPop. ColourPop just makes my favorite eyeshadow palettes. I love them, and very rarely do I actually try a ColourPop palette that I don't enjoy using. So when they release new palettes, it's not a question as to whether or not I would like it or if it would perform well, but The fact is, I don't need every single palette they release because they release a lot of palettes. So I've skipped over quite a few of their recent palettes. A few that come to mind that I considered buying: the Flutterby palette, which was like their cool toned purple butterfly palette, the You're a Cutie palette, which those two are pretty similar, and then the X's and O's palette. And the reason why I'm glad that I skipped over all of them is because they released the All That palette for Valentine's Day. And while the color stories are not exactly the same, they all kind of have a pinky purple berry toned vibe going on. But the All That palette is like the palette of my dreams. I love that palette so much. It's definitely going to be one of my favorites of 2020. I know it's still early in the year, but I just think it is so pretty, and I like it so much more than I would have liked any of those other ones. It really is just such a gorgeous palette. It has pinks and reds and berries, and there's kind of like a sparkly black in the corner. When you mix that in, it kind of gives off more of like a purpley vibe when you mix it with the pink shadows. So honestly, I love every single look that I've ever created with that, and I don't think that I would have liked any of those other palettes as much as this one. Okay, the last palette that I'm glad I didn't buy is the new Urban Decay Wired palette. It's a pretty new palette, but it's getting terrible reviews. Temptalia actually gave it like a D rating. I do check out her website because I feel like she is so knowledgeable about makeup and she's very unbiased. So she will give products good ratings if they deserve them and bad ratings if they deserve them. And her review was pretty funny, but she just didn't have anything good to say about this palette at all. I've seen a couple of YouTube videos where people use this, and it just seems like a very lackluster palette. It's lacking pigmentation, the shadows are hard to blend, and it just seems like a complete fail, which is really disappointing. I won't say that this palette was like at the top of my wish list, but I wanted it to do well because if this palette's a flop, Urban Decay is not going to keep creating colorful palettes. They're going to stick with their neutral palettes, their naked palettes, because those sell well. And I remember their electric palette was like so big and a lot of people loved it, but I think in general it seemed to perform a lot better than this one. So I wanted it to be a success, but honestly just kind of looks like a disappointment. I'm sure that we will see it on clearance sooner rather than later, which does suck. So I am glad that I didn't buy that one. I'd rather stick with like my affordable ColourPop colorful shadows that work well and that are a lot less expensive. Okay guys, that is the end of my video. It is 50 degrees outside, which is pretty rare where I live. So I'm going to take my dogs outside on a walk, enjoy the nice weather. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in seeing these videos more often on my channel, let me know and I can film them maybe like once every few months. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and I'll see you very soon with a new video. Bye.